Well, look who finally gets to see the receipts. The evidence, the undeniable proof that you were telling the truth the entire time. Welcome back, you beautiful, vindicated masterpiece. They called you crazy, didn't they? Paranoid, delusional, too sensitive. Just making things up for attention. They gaslit you so intensely that you started doubting your own memories, instincts, and even your sanity. But now the truth has exploded in their faces and everyone's disgusted, horrified, sitting in their shame as they realize they destroyed an innocent person while protecting the real monster. How does it feel, knowing you were right all along? Every instinct that screamed danger was accurate. Every time they called you dramatic, you were actually being merciful, because you could have said so much more. They framed you perfectly, didn't they? Built a narrative so convincing that even those who loved you began to question you. They started whispering behind your back, distancing themselves as if you were toxic. They painted you as the problem, the unstable one, the troublemaker who couldn't just move on like a normal person. But you weren't the problem. You were the witness. You saw through the performance and refused to pretend everything was fine when it was rotting from the inside. That made you dangerous to them, because liars need cooperation, manipulators need silence, and abusers need everyone to look away. But you didn't. You refused to shut up or play along. So they made you the villain before you could expose them as one. And now the truth has broken through. Every lie they constructed has shattered. Every false narrative they spun has collapsed. Their manipulations stand exposed for everyone to see. Timestamps proving you right, screenshots revealing their deceit, witnesses finally speaking up after years of silence, patterns emerging that validate everything you tried to warn people about. Suddenly, everyone's sick to their stomach as they realize what they did, who they abandoned, whose side they took without question. The same people who once called you bitter now call you brave. The same voices that dismissed you are now defending you. The same crowd that turned its back on you is scrambling to rewrite history, pretending they always believed you. But here's the truth. What disgusts them most isn't just that you were framed. It's that they fell for it so easily. They were so quick to judge, so eager to believe the worst, so comfortable watching you suffer while they stayed safe in ignorance. They're disgusted with themselves now, ashamed that they became part of your torment, that they let someone manipulate them into becoming weapons against you. And now they have to sit with that. Now they have to look in the mirror and face what they became. Now they have to face the reality that they hurt someone who was already bleeding. Some will apologize, some will make excuses, and others will quietly disappear, unfollowing, distancing, pretending they were never part of the mob. But none of that changes what happened, and none of it erases what you endured alone. The real power in this moment isn't in the vindication itself. It's in who you became while waiting for it. You didn't sit around begging for belief. You rebuilt yourself from the wreckage they left behind. You turned isolation into independence, pain into precision, and betrayal into an unshakable sense of self. They thought they were breaking you, but they were actually forging you, hammering you into something so resilient that now you don't even need their apologies to be whole. You healed without them, found peace without their validation, and became the person you needed when no one else showed up. Here's the truth they'll never admit, even now that everything's exposed. Deep down, they always knew. Somewhere in the back of their minds, they sensed something was off. They knew the story didn't add up, that you weren't the person being described. But it was easier to believe the lie than confront the liar. Easier to blame you than challenge someone they liked. Easier to watch you fall than risk their own comfort by standing up for what was right. So they joined your destruction, not with open malice, but with silence, doubt, and selective memory. Every time you tried to speak your truth, they weaponized ignorance, turning it against your credibility, your character, your sanity. Now they have to live with what that choice cost you and what it revealed about them. The frame was flawless, built carefully, piece by piece, with just enough truth laced into the lies to make it believable, just enough emotion to make it sympathetic, and just enough detail to make it impossible to disprove without sounding defensive. Every word was calculated, every tear rehearsed, every story crafted to trigger sympathy and protection. They made themselves the victim and cast you as the villain with surgical precision, and everyone believed it. Because people crave simple stories. They want clear heroes and obvious monsters. They want to think they can recognize evil when they see it. But evil doesn't come with warning signs. It hides behind the face of the hurt, the wounded, the misunderstood. And it points at the real victim screaming monster until everyone sees fangs where there's only exhaustion and survival. You tried to defend yourself, but every defense sounded like an excuse, every explanation like a justification. Every attempt to tell your side made you look more guilty, because that's how framing works. That's how gaslighting functions on a mass scale. They set the narrative, and anything you said to contradict it only reinforced their illusion. Eventually, you stopped trying. You stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped bleeding for people who wanted your silence more than your truth. You went quiet, not out of defeat, but out of clarity. You stopped playing their game, you stopped feeding them ammunition, and that silence, that terrified them. Because silence meant they no longer had control. Silence meant you were healing. Where they couldn't monitor or control it, your silence became powerful. The truth didn't surface because you convinced anyone or finally found the right words. It came out because lies have expiration dates. Manipulation always leaves evidence, and people who frame others can't help but repeat their own patterns until someone finally notices. And once one person does, once a single crack appears in the facade, the whole structure collapses. Suddenly, everyone sees what was always there. The truth didn't change, it was the truth all along. The only difference is that now people are finally willing to look at it, finally brave enough to admit they were wrong, finally disgusted enough with themselves to feel something resembling remorse. And you get to watch it happen. You get to see the narrative flip in real time. The same people who abandoned you now scrambling to distance themselves from the one who framed you. But let's be honest, as satisfying as this vindication might feel, it doesn't undo what you went through. It doesn't give back the time you lost, heal the damage to your mental health, or restore your faith in people. You spent months, maybe years, being treated like you were toxic, dangerous, someone to be avoided and whispered about. You replayed conversations over and over, questioned your own memory, wondered if maybe they were right, and you really were the problem. You withdrew not because you stopped caring, but because solitude felt safer than being misunderstood. You stopped sharing your story because every time you did, the looks you got told you they'd already made up their minds. That kind of isolation is a psychological torture most will never understand. The slow, silent war of being framed by someone everyone adores, while you're the one everyone suspects. And now, everyone's disgusted. Everyone's sorry. Everyone suddenly remembers how they always had a bad feeling about the other person. They want to apologize, to say they should have believed you, should have listened. But where were they when you needed them? Where were they when you were screaming into the void, desperate for just one person to give you the benefit of the doubt? They were silent. They were comfortable. They were protecting their peace while you drowned in chaos. And now they want credit for feeling guilty. They want you to comfort them, forgive them, let them become part of your healing arc, as if they weren't complicit in your destruction. But you don't owe them that comfort. You don't owe them forgiveness just because the truth finally forced its way through their denial. What they don't understand, and maybe never will, is that you didn't survive this to make them feel better about their betrayal. You didn't claw your way out of that pit just to hand them redemption. You did it for you. You healed for you. You rebuilt your identity for you. Their regret and their guilt don't change the fact that you did it alone. You were your own witness when no one else would see. Your own defender when everyone else accused. Your own proof that you weren't what they said you were. And that makes you something they can't comprehend. Something that still unsettles them even now that they know the truth. Because the real shock isn't just that you were innocent, it's that you stayed good. You stayed honest. You stayed true to yourself, even when being fake would have been easier, even when playing their game might have protected your reputation. You refused to become what they accused you of being. You refused to let their lies reshape your character or their betrayal turn you into a betrayer. That kind of integrity, the courage to stand firm in your truth even when it cost you everything, is what they can't comprehend. Because most of them would have folded. Most would have compromised. Most would have become the monster just to survive the accusation. Right now, inside the minds of those who finally realize they destroyed you for nothing, guilt isn't the only thing festering. It's fear. They're terrified of what you might do with your vindication, of what you might say about them, of how easily you could expose their part in your suffering. They're scrambling to regain control of the narrative, spinning it to make themselves look like victims, too. They want to be seen as people who were deceived, not as people who consciously chose disbelief. They're begging for sympathy for being fooled, for understanding for their mistake. They want to be seen as collateral damage of the same deception that nearly broke you. But you see through that now. You recognize the pattern, the desperate rewriting of history, the calculated manipulation dressed up as remorse. Some people are so obsessed with protecting their own innocence that they'll twist reality itself to avoid accountability. They'll claim they didn't know, that the liar was too convincing, that they would have acted differently if only they'd had the full picture. But the truth is, they did have your picture. They had your testimony, your consistency, your character. They just chose to ignore it because it was easier to believe someone else. Their disgust, their horror, their regret. It's all self-centered. It's about them learning to live with what they did, not about them truly understanding what they put you through. And here's the part that cuts the deepest. Some of them still don't fully believe you, even now, even with the evidence laid bare. They're minimizing it, softening it, convincing themselves it wasn't that bad or that maybe both sides were to blame. Because to fully accept the truth would mean facing the full weight of their guilt. And most people would rather live in denial than do that. They'd rather blur the lines, pretend no one was really at fault, than confront the ugly reality that they helped destroy someone who never deserved it. They'll crawl back now with half-hearted apologies, trying to sound sincere while carefully avoiding accountability. Their messages will be filled with excuses dressed up as explanations. Phrases like, "I didn't know the whole story," or "I was manipulated too," or the classic, "I just didn't want to get involved." They'll pretend these words carry the weight of remorse when in reality, they're just desperate attempts to rewrite their own part in what happened. They'll offer you peace without restitution, closure without honesty, forgiveness without reflection. They'll try to smooth things over with half-truths and vague sentiments because facing the full extent of their betrayal would shatter the image they have of themselves. But here's the thing. You don't need their peace. You don't need their closure. You don't need them to finally understand what they did, because you've already stopped needing anything from them at all. You've already done what they never could. You survived annihilation, not physical, but emotional, social, spiritual. You survived being erased, misrepresented, and demonized while the real perpetrator was praised for their bravery and charm. You lived through being abandoned by people who swore they cared about you, only to watch them align with your accuser and call it neutrality. You were buried under lies, but instead of suffocating, you learned to breathe through the soil. You clawed your way out piece by piece until you could stand again, not as the person you were before, but as someone sharper, wiser, untouchable. They called you broken, but what they didn't realize is that every break made you more unbreakable. You rebuilt yourself from the debris they left behind. You found strength in solitude, courage in silence, and clarity in pain. You learned that your own validation is stronger than 1,000 apologies. You learned that survival, when the world turns its back, is a form of power that terrifies those who depend on approval to exist. You trusted yourself when no one else would. You became your own truth, your own protector, your own anchor, and that's something no one can ever strip away. So let them sit in their shame. Let them replay every moment they dismissed you, every time they stayed silent, every time they laughed at your pain because it was easier than confronting their cowardice. Let them choke on their guilt when they realize how easily they were manipulated into becoming your executioners. You don't owe them a comforting version of your story. You don't owe them forgiveness just because the truth is now undeniable. You've earned your rage, your boundaries, your refusal to make it easy for them. Healing doesn't mean erasing what happened. It means integrating it, learning from it, and knowing that some wounds don't need to be forgiven to be closed. Now let's talk about the person who orchestrated it all. The one who built the narrative that almost destroyed you. The architect of deception. The liar who looked you dead in the eye, smiled, and spoke poison so convincingly that even you began to question your own sanity. That person is panicking now. The walls are closing in. They're scrambling behind the scenes, reaching out to anyone who will still listen, spinning new versions of events like a drowning person clawing at the air. They're messaging mutual friends, twisting timelines, inventing motives, trying to reframe themselves as the misunderstood hero of their own downfall. They'll say you are obsessed. They'll say you can't let go. They'll accuse you of trying to ruin them when all you ever did was tell the truth they worked so hard to bury. They're not sorry. They're terrified. Terrified of exposure, of losing control, of having their carefully crafted mask ripped away. Terrified that the sympathy they weaponized for so long is evaporating now that the truth has teeth. Their panic isn't guilt, it's fear of consequence. They don't feel remorse, they feel cornered. And still, unbelievably, some people will defend them. Some people are so emotionally invested in the lie that they can't afford to believe the truth. They'll twist themselves into pretzels trying to justify it, saying the evidence is misinterpreted, or that you're exaggerating, or that it's more complicated than it looks. They'll argue for gray areas that don't exist, because admitting the truth means admitting they helped destroy someone innocent. It means facing the fact that they weren't bystanders, they were participants. That's a truth most people simply aren't built to handle. So they choose denial. They cling to the illusion because it's safer than the mirror. They'd rather live in the comfort of confusion than face the discomfort of conscience. They'll keep saying, it wasn't that bad. Everyone makes mistakes. You need to move on, because that's their way of shrinking the story to fit their guilt. But you know the truth, you lived it, you paid for it. You carry the scars that they only watched from a distance. And while they're busy managing their image, you've already transcended the entire game. You no longer need to convince anyone of who you are because your integrity speaks louder than every lie that tried to bury you. You've already won, not because they apologized, not because the world finally caught up, but because you endured, you evolved, and you stayed you. They'll cling to anything, any excuse, any half-truth, any desperate rationalization, just to avoid confronting the one fact that would crush their self-image, that they were manipulated into becoming weapons against someone who never deserved it. They'll say they didn't know, that they got caught up in things, that they meant well but were misled. They'll dissect the situation to death, trying to find loopholes that make their betrayal seem smaller, softer, more understandable. Because if they admit the full truth, if they face what they actually did, they'd have to look straight into the mirror and see not victims of manipulation but accomplices to it. And most people don't have the courage for that. Most would rather twist reality than face the shame of what they became. But truth, real truth, not the kind people spin to protect themselves, has no interest in being convenient. It doesn't need defending or rebranding. It doesn't need you to stand on a soapbox or prove it with passion. It simply is. Solid, unbothered, undeniable. It doesn't panic, doesn't chase, doesn't beg to be seen. Truth just waits steady as stone while lies collapse under their own weight. And that's what's happening now. Slowly, relentlessly, the performance falls apart. The inconsistencies surface. The false stories contradict themselves, and the truth, quiet and patient, reclaims its place. That's the beautiful thing about truth. It outlasts everything built on illusion. You don't have to fight for it anymore. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to convince people who never wanted to see you clearly in the first place. Those still clinging to the lie, protecting the narrative that justified their behavior, they're no longer your problem. They've shown you who they are, and it's not your job to save them from their own cowardice. Let them keep their illusions if that's what they need to sleep at night. Let them drown in their denial while you breathe freely in clarity. Because now you get to decide who belongs in your story. And anyone who preferred a comfortable lie over an uncomfortable truth doesn't deserve a single page in your next chapter. Here's what most people will never grasp. The most devastating part of the manipulation wasn't the rumors or the reputational damage. It was what it did to you inside your own mind. That was the real frame, the masterpiece of deceit. It wasn't just that they lied about what happened. It's that they made you question whether your memories were real, whether your instincts were trustworthy, whether your emotions were valid. They made you doubt yourself so deeply that you started editing your reactions, walking on eggshells inside your own thoughts. They wanted you to believe that the chaos was your fault, that you were unstable, irrational, dramatic. That's the kind of psychological warfare that doesn't just destroy reputations, it fractures identities. Gaslighting at that level doesn't just distort how others see you, it corrodes how you see yourself. It infiltrates the most sacred part of you, your trust in your own mind. You start wondering if your perception of reality can even be trusted. You question your own emotions before you express them. You replay events over and over, analyzing every sentence, every look, every pause, until your own certainty feels foreign. That's the kind of invisible wound most people will never understand. Rebuilding from that isn't like healing from ordinary pain. It's reconstruction from the inside out. You had to learn how to believe yourself again, to anchor your reality not in others' opinions but in your own truth. You had to rebuild trust not with the world, but with your own instincts. You had to learn that clarity isn't arrogance, that boundaries aren't cruelty, that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's survival. That's a kind of self-recovery most people will never experience, and because of that, they'll never truly grasp the strength it takes to stand where you stand now. So when people say they're disgusted that this happened, they mean well, but they don't get it. They're disgusted by the event, not by the internal destruction you had to rebuild from. They think your pain ended when the truth came out, when the evidence surfaced, when the apologies started trickling in. But that's just the visible layer. They can't see the months or years you spent trying to trust your own mind again. They can't see the nights you stayed awake wondering if you'd ever feel whole again, if you'd ever be able to speak without fear of being dismissed. They'll never understand that the hardest part wasn't being hated. It was being doubted, especially by yourself. That's a form of isolation deeper than loneliness. It's like existing in a fog where you can't tell what's real, and the only compass you have left is flickering. It's a betrayal that cuts beyond friendship. It slices into the very foundation of who you thought you were. But you faced it. You faced it when no one believed you, when every voice around you told you to stop talking, to move on, to let it go. You stared into that void of uncertainty and built a new certainty out of it. You became your own witness, your own validator, your own source of truth. And that's what makes you untouchable now. You've earned an unshakable understanding of who you are, what you value, and what you will never again allow. You know now that being doubted doesn't make you wrong. that standing alone doesn't make you weak, that silence isn't defeat, it's discipline. You've learned that your truth doesn't need permission to exist, that your worth isn't measured by who believes you. That kind of clarity is a fortress. That kind of self-trust is armor. It's not loud or flashy. It's quiet, steady, grounded. It's the power that comes from knowing you'll never again abandon yourself just to be understood by others. And that terrifies them. Because people who once thrived on your confusion can't manipulate someone who's anchored in their own truth. They can't twist your perception anymore. They can't shake your faith in your reality. You've become immune to their games, so let them believe whatever helps them cope. Let them rewrite the past if it makes them feel cleaner. None of it matters now. Because you've seen the truth up close and you didn't just survive it, you embodied it. You became living proof that even when the world calls you crazy, your truth remains your compass. You found your way back to yourself, and that's the kind of power no one, not the liar, not the crowd, not the cowards, can ever take from you. Let's talk about the people who are suddenly resurfacing. The ones flooding your messages with long emotional paragraphs now that the truth has finally been revealed. The ones who ghosted you when things got ugly, but are now trying to slither back into your life, pretending they always had a feeling something wasn't right. They'll swear they never fully believed what was said about you. They'll say things like, "I always thought something was off," or "I didn't want to take sides until everything came out." They'll dress it up as caution, as emotional maturity, as some kind of moral neutrality. But make no mistake, they're lying to themselves and to you. Maybe not out of malice, but definitely out of guilt. Because the truth is this: if they really doubted the lies, if they truly felt something was wrong, if even a fraction of them believed in you, they would have acted. They would have reached out when you were being torn apart. They would have spoken up when the narrative didn't make sense. They would have checked on you when you were isolated and drowning in accusations. But they didn't. They stayed quiet. They stayed comfortable. They stayed aligned with the majority, because siding with you was dangerous. Defending you wasn't safe. So they took the coward's route. Silence. And now, with the truth finally out and the world suddenly realizing what you were saying all along, they want to come back. They want to rewrite history. They want to tell themselves that they always believed in you deep down, as if their internal belief, unspoken, invisible, and useless, means anything now. They want to reframe their silence as trying not to make things worse. They want to absolve themselves without earning forgiveness. They want to ease their own guilt by reimagining themselves as victims of confusion, rather than participants in your destruction. They'll send you these messages that sound heartfelt but are soaked in self-protection. I didn't know what to believe. I didn't want to get involved. I thought maybe you just needed space. I was trying to stay neutral. All these excuses have the same subtext. Your pain wasn't worth the risk of my discomfort. That's what they mean when they say they were confused. They weren't confused. They were complicit. They chose to prioritize being comfortable over being compassionate. You remember who these people are. You remember how they watched you unravel and did nothing. You remember who stayed silent when the rumors spread, who looked away when your name became a punchline. You remember who avoided you in public, who hesitated before responding to your texts, who unfollowed you just to avoid drama. You remember who whispered, "I don't know what's true, but," and then went on to repeat the lies anyway. You remember everything because pain has a perfect memory, and now they want to come back. Not because they love you, but because they can't stand who they were when they abandoned you. They want to borrow your redemption to ease their remorse. They want to stand next to your vindication and pretend they were part of it. They want to be seen as the people who always knew you were good, even though their silence nearly broke you. But you don't owe them that comfort. You don't owe them the luxury of pretending they were better than they were. Because you know the truth. They weren't. They were quiet when it mattered. They were absent when it counted. They chose comfort over conscience, self-image over integrity. And now, when it cost them nothing, they want to appear virtuous. They want to stand beside you in the light after they left you to bleed in the dark. So what do you do with that? What do you do with the vindication, the disgust, the flood of apologies, and "I should have knowns"? The answer is simple. Whatever the hell you want. There's no moral debt here. No obligation to forgive. No rule book that says healing requires reunion. Some people rebuild, some people reconcile, and some people walk away forever. All are valid choices. This time, the choice belongs to you, not to the people who once silenced you. But understand this deeply. You owe them nothing, not your time, not your energy, not your forgiveness, not your explanation, not your empathy. They already received all of that when it mattered, and they wasted it. You reached out for understanding when you were in pieces. They turned their backs. You tried to explain your truth, and they called you dramatic. You tried to defend yourself, and they accused you of making excuses. You offered them your heart, and they left it bleeding. You begged for compassion, and they gave you distance. So no, you don't owe them anything now that the truth is convenient. You don't owe them entry back into your life just because they finally believe you. You don't have to forgive people who only feel bad because they got caught believing the wrong story. If they call you bitter, let them. If they accuse you of holding grudges, let them choke on their hypocrisy. These are the same people who held grudges against you based on lies. They were quick to condemn, slow to think, and silent when you were suffering. They don't get to moralize your boundaries now. You want to know what's really making them sick to their stomachs? It's not just that you were innocent. It's how long you suffered. It's how viciously they turned on you. It's how completely you were abandoned, while the real villain was embraced, protected, and defended. They're haunted now by the realization that they chose the side of cruelty over conscience, that they protected the liar and left the truth-teller alone, that they were complicit in your destruction. And now that the truth is undeniable, they're scrambling to distance themselves from their own cowardice. They'll say things like, "I didn't know." But they did. Somewhere deep down, they always did. They saw the cracks, the inconsistencies, the moments that didn't add up. They just didn't want to confront it, because confronting it meant admitting they were wrong, and worse, that they were part of the problem. And for some people, facing that kind of guilt feels impossible, so they'll keep spinning their own version of events, one where they're not villains, just misinformed, one where they were innocent bystanders instead of silent accomplices. But you don't have to participate in their revisionist history. You don't have to make space for their self-forgiveness. You've done the hardest thing already. You survived being erased. You endured the humiliation, the loneliness, the nights where you questioned your own sanity. You clawed your way back from the edge without their help, without their belief, without their support. You rebuilt yourself from ashes while they pretended you no longer existed. And now that you've risen, they want to join your victory lap. They want to act like they were part of the climb when they were the ones who stepped on your fingers. But this time, the door stays closed. This time, your peace comes first. You get to decide who earns a seat at your table, and silence during your destruction does not earn a place in your rebuilding. They can keep their guilt, their excuses, their rewritten stories. That's their burden to live with, not yours. Because you've learned something they haven't. Peace doesn't come from forgiving the wrong people. It comes from refusing to let them close enough to hurt you again. You don't need closure from cowards. You don't need apologies from those who only speak when it's safe. You don't need to prove you're over it. You've outgrown them, outlasted them, and outshone them. And that's what truly terrifies them. Because deep down, they know they'll never again have access to the version of you they destroyed. They'll never again be trusted, never again be welcomed, never again be allowed near your peace. You've built a new life from the wreckage they left behind, one they'll only ever get to watch from the outside. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm, to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlighten Wisdom.